But that sort of leads us to hope across this whole landscape, because we've seen a bunch of changes, right, so far in this offseason. And now the dust is starting to settle. And I think there's a weird realization fans are going to have that your favorite team's quarterback problem is not solvable. And what I mean by that is when you look at the upcoming free agency list, Malik Willis is widely considered to be the top of that list, right? So outside of Malik Willis, it gets really weird. And I'm not even sure Malik Willis is that great of a prospect. And then you look at the draft and say, okay, well, no, I'm going to get it in the draft. Right now, most draft graders have Fernando Mendoza as a first-round talent. Outside of that, there are many people that don't think that there's more than a third-round talent. So, there are a bunch of teams that need a quarterback, Frank, but there are not a bunch of quarterbacks out there for teams to have.
No, this quarterback carousel is going to be ugly. And we've had this in the past few years where a lot of teams are looking for a new quarterback, but the draft did provide some hope. Whether it was 2 years ago and 6 guys went in the top 12 or whatever. But you're right. Raiders taking Mendoza. Good for you.
Thank you.
And then what?
Can I sing Fernando by ABBA this year? I don't know. I think I need to do a whole cover of Fernando by ABBA. They need to play it after every touchdown. I'm fine. And so go ahead.
I want to see that. But yes, so the Raiders have their answer in the draft, and anybody else is just guessing. I don't see anybody drafting a guy day 1 or day 2 and saying, yep, that's our starter week 1. So what are you going to do? We talked about Kirk Cousins. He's probably going to be really in demand after a few good games at the end of the season. I don't know if that's a sure thing necessarily. Malik Willis, same. Not a sure thing. I like what he's done, but this is going to get ugly. There's some teams that you're going to look at week 1 and say, they're starting who at quarterback? Really? Wow. Okay, that's how we're starting the season.
Yeah, and you talked about the draft as well, right? We were going into the season, not only was he the Heisman favorite, but I believe the favorite to go number 1 overall, Arch Manning. Right, so potentially you got this draft. You got Arch Manning, you got Lenoris Sellers. Yeah. You have all of these players. Dante Moore. All of a sudden, the draft doesn't look the same as it did in the first round. So you even have some of these teams like the Rams, right? 2 first-round picks. All right, they're going to be able to package that for a quarterback to get after Matthew Stafford. Well, now you're hoping Matthew Stafford comes back, but you just don't have the same in the draft. So we see this, right? Quarterback cycles, it comes and goes. Sometimes supply and demand doesn't exactly add up. That's what we're seeing here. I think you're going to see more of those teams go with hey, we saw it work with Sam Darnold, who, by the way, still led the NFL in turnovers, I believe, during the season.
You're correct,
so for starting quarterback. So, still has played very well, still has those deficits, but is in the Super Bowl. Is that a Bryce Young? Is that a Tua, right, as a second act? A Kyler Murray? It didn't play well for that long. Drew Lock, right, a backup for the Seahawks. There are players out there where, like Malik Willis, when he comes in for the Packers, you're like, wow, he's clearly rehabilitated from what he was in Tennessee, what he came out in the draft, right? So he's a much better prospect after a couple years in the NFL. Do you want to take a chance on a guy like that versus a Trinidad Chambliss or somebody else further down, second round, third round, say, hey, like I said with Tyler Shuck, right? It can work out. Russell Wilson was a third-round pick. Those are very few and far between that they work out.
And part of the difficulty here is, to your point, there's not a clear path. Mac Jones is a name a lot of people like. Yep. I talked to Nate Tice about Mac this morning on Daily, and even he said the 49ers just watched Brock Purdy get hurt. Mac is still under contract for another year.
People value their backup quarterbacks.
You think that they're really you think Shanahan's no, we don't need Gage. So, Mac Jones, I don't think is particularly acquireable right
Unless
now.
You want to overpay, and why would you overpay for Mac Jones?
And as much as we sit here and say, well, then Cardinals quarterback Murray. Kyler Murray. I want to call him Kenneth Murray. Good Lord. Kyler Murray, the Cardinals may move off of him, but that depends on how they really feel about Jacoby Brissett, right? Tua. Everybody said, well, the Dolphins going to get rid of Tua. For who? Who's your starting quarterback?
$90 million to not have a quarterback? Yeah.
And then you factor on top of all of that, I will remind the entire world, there are 4 teams this year in the NFL that won 3 games. One of those teams is picking 4th in the first round. So if your answer is, I'm just going to suck and we'll get a quarterback next year, you can't guarantee you can outsuck everybody to get to the quarterback, even if it is a good quarterback class. And then on top of all that, Ben, a year ago right now, we were all saying, don't take Cam Ward. Wait till next year's draft. Next year's draft's going to be so much better. I did phoners from Nashville because I lived there forever where they're like, should we not take Cam Ward? Should we wait till next year's draft? Well, how would that have worked out, right? So I think some point, like all of this, well, we'll address it in the future. You know, you can't. We'll address it in free agency. There ain't nobody out there. Like, I think we're gonna wake up the beginning of the season and see a third of the league not have a quality, competent starting quarterback.
And not to, bring up a sore subject as a Vikings fan, but sometimes you don't necessarily make the right decision as well when you have a quarterback. So there's so much out there that goes into it. And like we saw with J.J. McCarthy, when you make that first-round pick and you have that investment, emotional investment, draft capital, it's tough to give up on a guy. And so I think we're going to see that with some of these other teams. Same thing with a Tua, Bryce Young. Is that your franchise guy? Well, maybe not. I think it just depends on the eye of the beholder. We're going to see them go to some other teams, probably. Will they get another chance, right? Zach Wilson, is he ever going to get another chance? Like, players are talented. Maybe they were in the wrong system, or maybe they were talented in college or not as good an NFL quarterback. And a lot of that is, as we talked about, the coordinators too, right? That makes a huge difference. How good is the team around them as well?
And not only the teams we know are fishing in the quarterback waters, but you have teams like the Vikings who want to add depth, as I keep saying.
Falcons.
You have the Falcons who have no idea about Michael Penix right now. You have the Colts. Daniel Jones might not be ready for the start of the season, and I don't think they trust Anthony Richardson. But they're going to say, there's 10 teams that can't find a starter. We're trying to find a quality backup. Like, that's
Right,
not
we're going to get rid of our backup.
right. Like, this is just, it is going to be a quagmire this offseason. If you have a quarterback, a young quarterback, a Cam, a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, you should feel really, really good right now because you're not having to answer his questions this offseason.
And it just gets, I'll go back to Anthony Richardson. Again, talking to Tice today. He said, name to keep a lookout on next year could be AR. Like, maybe somebody makes that move. That's what we're banking on? Like, that's the way we're going to save this whole thing?
96%.
It's crazy. And that's part of why, even with the Steelers, like we joked a minute ago, Aaron Rodgers, to the Cardinals. Well, you mentioned, no, he's going to go back and play with McCarthy in Pittsburgh. For what? Like, I get that, but if you're the Steelers, all you're doing is pushing all your chips in on, we'll figure out the quarterback next year, but we're not going to be good enough. Like, they had the draft board up earlier and where the draft standing is right now, and I think off the top of my head, the Steelers are like 16, 17.
20th?
Somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
But wherever the Steelers, yeah, you're right, because they made the playoffs. Wherever the Steelers look, when you start to look at, thank you guys, they put it up again. When you look at how many of the teams that are on that list that next year are likely to be in the long-term quarterback draft market, it is absolutely the Jets. It is the Cardinals. I don't think it's the Titans. We'll see. I don't think it's the Giants, but it is the Browns, right? It could be the Saints. We don't know. Like, it should be Miami. It is easy to find 8 teams, 9 teams picking before the Steelers next year that will all need a quarterback. So if your answer is, let's just run it back with Aaron Rodgers, see how it goes, cool. You're going to win enough games that you're not in contention to get a quarterback. You're going to be stuck as somewhere in the middle of all this. You're not close to a Super Bowl, and you're going to need to try and out-trade 8 other teams in a draft that might have 3 quarterbacks. Like, I'm doomsday at this point, but this is why I think right now I don't know that the NFL has had a bigger quarterback problem than it does today.
Yeah, and usually that is said, and I push back on it. This time I can't because
Look at that.
there are some teams that are just at critical mass at quarterback. Like, what are we going to do? There's no outs. You're right. It's going to be having to be somebody like, okay, Zach Wilson, maybe you're the next Sam Darnold. Like that, or it's Shador, you did a little bit late in the season. We got no other choice, so give it a go, kid. Like, let's see what you got this year. Like, there's going to be a lot of teams just talking themselves in.
And teams already don't prioritize the backup quarterback as much as they should, right? We've seen these teams. The 49ers stayed afloat because Mac Jones. You could argue whether the Cardinals stayed afloat, but Jacoby Brissett played arguably better than Kyler Murray. Like, these teams that invest in it, Jameis Winston, somewhere, right? Like, they can keep your team afloat for a couple games. And yet some teams, I mean, you have Drew Lock, depending on how you feel with the Seahawks, and I believe Josh Dobbs, right, with the Patriots. I don't know how you're going to feel if Drake May goes out in the first quarter. Not going to feel as good as if Mac Jones, right, was your backup, or even a Mitch Trubisky in Buffalo, somebody who's at least a veteran. So it's an interesting position, and like you said, the supply and demand right now aren't matching.
When you describe it that way, though, Bennett, it makes me wonder. I've often thought, like, why do teams not prioritize drafting a guy in the 5th round that is not going to be your starting quarterback? But you know what? I'm going to keep him And I'm keeping
Right.
for the next
Sit there,
4
be
years.
in the meeting room,
I'm gonna
practice.
make sure over the course, like year one, I'm making my third string year one and year two. But by year three, I got my career backup. And I'm from day one, he knows exactly where he is. He knows exactly what matters. He will learn my system. He will know my system. Everything that we were saying about Jared Stidham going into the AFC Championship game. And God only knows, like Stidham had, like there was a moment in the first quarter where Stidham had a really nice throw. And I sat there and thought, oh my God, Sean Payton is about to outsmart all of us. Then
Maybe would have if there wasn't a blizzard, by the way.
right.
I was saying.
I mean, that does. But I do wonder if teams will start to create a draft approach or a signing approach of like, hey, I'm signing this guy and I'm paying him too much, but I don't need him to be my starter. I just need him to be on my roster long enough to love my system.
No, I agree. I agree, and I think that's teams that look for potential starters in the mid rounds. It's almost always a waste. Your David Webb, Kyle Lauletta, all the names. It just waste. But yes, to just be like
EJ Manuel.
Yeah, like we need to pick a guy who we could depend on as a backup. Like that, there's value in that. You see that, and that's why I talk about this all the time when we do the whole like, well, maybe this team is going to trade its backup. Jimmy Garoppolo is getting traded here. No, teams actually value their backup quarterback. It's an important position.
And generally, when you have a succession plan, it does work. Look at the Packers, right? I mean, they had that. Jordan Love would not have likely had the same career. He's not ready coming out of, I forget, Utah State, right? He wasn't ready to start as a rookie necessarily. They gave him time, sat behind there. Aaron Rodgers, you could argue maybe he was ready to start, but still had time to season, then came in, all of a sudden they hit the ground running. Now you got to start by week, 6, right? As a rookie, it goes very quick.
Just a reminder to everybody that Patrick Mahomes didn't start the majority
Exactly.
of his rookie year, and has oft times in interviews credited Alex Smith for teaching him how to be a pro. Malik Willis, you mentioned Jordan Love. I'll take it to his backup. Malik Willis is a better. I watched him in Tennessee. I saw how bad it was. It was a bad coaching, bad system, bad fit for a quarterback that wasn't ready. He gets to good coaching, he gets in a good system, and he gets the opportunity to slow and low it like barbecue. And what do you know? You end up with a much different version of that quarterback. So we'll see how the carousel goes. Sorry, I'm doomsday today.